I was so busy trying to read something that I forgot to click the buttons to turn myself live there, which was impressive. Let's hit that. Click some buttons very, very quickly just to make things go away. Few predictions coming in. Andrew made a prediction and then withdrew it, which is always very, very funny. That's not doing what I want it to do, so we'll get rid of that. And we will click the big button. Hey, there we go. Yes, I had a bit of a tech issue last night. Click some buttons. I did. I literally clicked some buttons. But yeah, I was having a bit of an issue with the machine the other night because for those of you going to Coventry, there is an interview I have done that is going to be in the programme, and I tried to record the interview, and just everything fell to pieces, and it totally turned out was because I had just completely shanked the settings on my new VPN. It was really terrible. I was like, what's going to happen on Wednesday? Then I realised what I'd done. There we go. So that'll be the so that was the thing there. Got a few bits and pieces coming in. Vault Tech Man, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong with that prediction. It's a pretty solid one, all things considered. Andrew also very, very right with his prediction. Queen Bee's winning at Guildford. I think that's probably I'd say that's a pretty comfortable thing. I mean, it's obviously not been as good a season for the Queen Bees this year, but they're doing all right, I think, on that front. Either way, folk filtering in, hopefully. I have not clicked any buttons to check anything in the last couple of minutes, so I assume that given that people are turning up, we are live. Yeah, we are. People have leapt in. What we'll do, I'm never wrong. Has my wife got a secret YouTube account I wasn't told about? Either way, we'll pop that there because we should probably get this thing started. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 PM, and welcome back to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to take you through the weird, wonderful, and wacky world that is the National Ice Hockey League structure. Here in Great Britain, we focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter. That is our home port. But of course, we are here for the whole entirety of the NIHL. All 5 divisions from Leeds to Lee Valley. We leave nobody out. That means we look at the National Division as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north and in the south. And boy, did we get a showcase of Division 1 and 2 this past weekend at the Steel City Showdown, the last weekend of the National Division playoffs. We've got Coventry to look forward to. We've had the first raft of those NIHL awards, sponsored by the Ice Barn, powered by True Hockey. There you go, Hayden, I've said it. And a bunch of other news, of course, to talk about. Big news as well out of the National, where the first coaching change is already in the works. But before we kick on too hard and too fast with all of the news ahead of this upcoming weekend, we need to go through a little bit of housekeeping here. So if you're old and been here for a while, hum along, you know the words. bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL, and a little bit of British hockey, because of course the one thing a lot of you have been doing is following my weird and wonderful journey through British hockey with our Banners on the Road series, an in-depth look at every game that I've gone to. And of course, when I head up into the commentary box, you get our little mini series of that, which is the In the Box thinking. And I called my first ever game of Elite League playoff hockey this past weekend, as I was there at the Spectrum for the first leg of Guildford and Nottingham in the Elite League. Not to be for Guildford in the end, although they did win on Saturday by 3-2. So everybody got the nice big happy send-off at the Spectrum, but just not to be. Nottingham look really, really good, it should be said. And I'm not a betting man, but if I was a betting man, I might be sticking a cheeky fiver on the Nottingham Panthers to do some damage this weekend on home ice at Nottingham, if you know what I mean. But either way, as I say, Banners on the Wall, the WordPress.com has all of those bits as well. Hockey stories, new pieces coming once the season ends, just because I'm going to have some time to write them. Because like I say, I've got some stuff in the pipeline. It's all good. Like I say, I'm working on a historical piece, and it's just it's so weird, and it's just there's so much stuff that the issue I'm having with it is I'm trying to refine it down. But either way, you've got Banners on the Road, you've got hockey stories, you've got the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast, you've got Dice Hockey, our free to download game, 14 years worth of stuff to read, check out, and enjoy over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. And of course, you're here on a Wednesday night. We've been here every Wednesday night through the season. If you're new, where have you been hiding? But thanks for coming and joining the party anyway. Head down, subscribe to the channel, check out all the bits and pieces we've got on the YouTube channel. Interviews with the movers and shakers of British and world hockey. Folk from we've got bits and pieces from across the entire spectrum of hockey to enjoy. Lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff there. And of course, it means Wednesday nights we're here on the BOTW What's Current stream. No magic password for you lot who watch on catch up this time. You can just stick a comment in and give us your predictions as to who's going to take home the respective playoff titles in Nottingham and Coventry this weekend. Let's have your thoughts on that one. But of course, the great thing is that we are here live Wednesday nights all the way through the season. We'll be back, of course, next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. to round off everything that we've seen. Look ahead to the World Championships for GB. Try and keep tabs on Liam Kirk as well. But of course, if you're joining us live, it means you get the chat. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything that you want to chuck in whilst we're having a little wander through British ice hockey. We love the fact that we've got a little bit of a regular community here, and if you chuck in and we all join in, it becomes a bit of a dialogue rather than a monologue. But of course, if you are going to use the chat, please do remember the golden rule here at BOTW, and that, of course, is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings, and we are going to have a jolly good time. News in the last hour out of the Berkshire Bees. Which is that one of it was obviously announced relatively recently at their end of season bits and pieces, but the Bees making a full press release that Richard Dobney, one of the club directors, has stepped down from his position. Obviously, as to be expected. Goodwill message from the Bees, and as they say here, with Richard stepping down, there was a vacancy for a volunteer director. If this is of interest, please get in contact with the club, because of course running a hockey club is hard work. So if you fancy having no time or any bits and pieces, then such is the way of things. Are they renaming again? They are not. They are the Berkshire Bees. They have been all year. Volt Tech Man. Good to see you in Nottingham. If you're a Panthers fan, good on you. Go watch the Lions as well. Hilarious fun. But yeah, so that's obviously some big news out of the Bees. And of course, the other big bit of news out of the National Division in the last couple of days. The big news that came out yesterday from the Romford Raiders, and that is that Adam Leishram and his assistant coach Lewis Jones will not be returning to the Sapphire for 2025-26. A little hard to tell from the press release whether this is Leishram leaving of his own accord, whether the directors have asked him to leave, or what, or whether they just couldn't come to an agreement as to what to do next season. Leishram stepped in last minute to coach this Romford side. A lot of you folks who hang around the National Division will know. For some of you newer folk, last season at the end of the year, the former owner of the Romford Raiders, John Scott, got into a position where he wanted to sell the club. The club was potentially in jeopardy of not being able to go forward as a result of it. A new group of directors took over, and they put together a team in record quick time, which, from a Romford perspective, maybe not the ending of the season they wanted, but they did relatively well. Made the final of the cup, got themselves into the playoffs, had a pretty good showing, gave Milton Keynes a whopping great scare in the playoffs as well, but ultimately not making their way back to the Coventry weekend like they did in 2023. So from a Leishram perspective, his off-ice stuff hasn't gone relatively well. He put together a really, really good side, albeit one that had its defensive lapses, had its issues as well. They signed Tom Brown from Billingham. That didn't work out, but got Owen Ryder in as a replacement, and I think Romford fans would agree that's worked out brilliantly for them. Signed Andrew Schufelt and Sean Miller. Miller and Schufelt, two top quality imports in this division. Miller, of course, nominated for the National Division Player of the Year and made the first All-Star team into the bargain. So certainly some of the recruitment elements have gone really well. Kept a hold of, a sort of Romford regulars, guys like Brandon Ailiff. Jake Sylvester came back and was really impressive. It's been another great year from TJ Anderson in terms of young prospects. Had some of those younger guys from the Buccaneers make some appearances. Harvey Briggs, whilst he had a bit of a brain fart this last weekend, it seems, has obviously done really, really well. What else have we had? Max Van Mullen, of course, has showed some real signs of promise, like he's going to be coming on. Thank you, Ben. We will mention that momentarily. But yeah, so obviously from an off-ice perspective, Leishram has done relatively well and been nominated for Coach of the Year, as we revealed last week exclusively on the show. The on-ice season for Adam Leishram has been a nightmare. Injuries, and injuries. When I went to Romford in the middle of March, he only iced a couple of shifts. He scored a couple of goals, but he only played on the power play and basically stood at the top of the crease and waited for stuff to fall his way. It's been a tough year on ice from Adam Leishram. He also has a job away from the ice. The press release from Romford alludes to the fact that he is a physiotherapist away from hockey, which, given the injury history he's had, ironic, I think, probably. But potentially now he's getting into full-time work away from hockey, looking at maybe just playing again and not having to deal with putting together a roster, dealing with all the things that comes with being a coach in a semi-professional nationwide league that has to sometimes travel to Dumfries when you're in Romford. That's 6 hours one way. So ultimately, Adam Leishram, in the history of this new era of the Romford Raiders, will be an important chapter point. But ultimately, that chapter has now closed. Now, the directors of the Raiders have said we will hear sooner rather than later, though clearly not before 8 o'clock, and if people can keep watching their phones in case they decide to reveal it during the show, please do, that we will hear of a new Romford Raiders head coach for 25-26 before this upcoming weekend and the playoffs, which is going to be some very, very impressive stuff. Really looking forward to all of that. But yeah, so either way, what we say, Anthony, I made a website, whole new application for what you do. It was a bloody headache. Which of the various ridiculous things that I do have you made that for? You might for those bits and pieces. You might have to elaborate on that one, Dylan. But yeah, ultimately, we are going to see a new era, a slight change to how the Raiders do things. Now, who could possibly come in? Because there's a bunch of different options there. Do you potentially go back down the player coaching route? Do you ask maybe a Schufer or a Miller to step into that role? A whole new appreciation for you. Apologies there. It helps if you type the words already done. But there's a bunch of different people that you could alter into that fact. Do Schufer and Miller potentially get offered a position to come in and be the new coach? Sean Barry, of course, Raiders defenseman, is one of the directors of the club. Does he maybe look at stepping in and taking over the coaching reins? Do the Raiders promote from within? Jason Buckman, of course, the coach of the Romford Buccaneers. There's an option right there on your doorstep. The Buccaneers punched well above their weight in Division 1 South this year, and if they're wanting to keep things local, particularly it's why we had Lewis Jones coming down from Yorkshire every week. Do you maybe look at Buckman as an option and see who might want to take over? And might it be easier to find somebody to coach the Buccaneers and entice Buckman to step up into the national division and try and press on from his career? Do they look elsewhere locally? Does Lewis, not to say that he will do this, but is Lewis Clifford an option? Would he be looking at coming back into national division hockey? He's already coaching in Chelmsford, has had relatively decent success with Chelmsford, winning the playoffs in 2024 and the South One Cup in 2025. Could Romford be his route back into national division coaching? A bunch of different ideas there that you could float out. They're not rumours, it's me speculating as we chat. But either way, it'll be interesting to see, and we will know before we all hit the Sky Dome on Saturday as to what is going on. So yeah, lots of exciting bits and pieces going on, and silly season begins before the season has even properly ended. So what we will do is we will have a look back at the last weekend of National Division action from the last round of the round robin in the playoffs. And it was going to be a tough one for the Sheffield Steel Dogs. They came into the weekend already knowing their destiny. They were out and they could not progress to the weekend. What's that? New head coach for Romford will be me. Probably not. God love you, Dylan, but no. Better place for ball hockey coaching. But either way, the Sheffield Steel Dogs out of the playoff race. This previous weekend was a weekend for them to cause a little bit of chaos on their way out the door to the golf course. But on Friday night, under the lights at Ice Sheffield, ahead of the Steel City Showdown, the curtain raiser, well, they couldn't. Unfortunately, the Steel Dogs couldn't raise their game in response, and the Lightning, knowing that they needed to get results as well, came into town and did the business. A 5-1 comprehensive win for the MK Lightning after their 1-point weekend the previous weekend. Come into Sheffield and do the damage. Ross Venus, Harry Gulliver, Rio Grinnell Park, and 2 from the coach, Tim Wallace, to put the Lightning over the line. The Sheffield Steel Dogs lone goal coming from, who else? Walker Summer. Which then takes us into Saturday and the absolute madness that was this one at the world's most versatile arena. The Seahawks knew that they needed to run the table. They needed 2 wins and to better Peterborough's results. And on Saturday evening, well, it was all over the place because the Tigers, knowing that they also couldn't get through because all their tiebreakers were against them, decided to come out, and they really did cause some chaos here. A 6-all at the end of regulation, but the Tigers will be kicking themselves because they were 6-3 ahead heading into the last 10 minutes, and the Seahawks took them to overtime and then won it in the shootout. Johnny Corneal, the whole Seahawks had joked on social media earlier today, don't fall in love with a lone player, and that's exactly what I think a few of them will have done off the back of this. Owen Sobchuk with a hat trick. Emil Svek, Corneal and Bonner in regulation time for the Seahawks. For the Tigers, Devon Skaleski with 2, Eric Henderson, Scott McKenzie, Harry Ferguson and Tom Byrne, and then Corneal with the shootout winner. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Group B and the Swindon Wildcats, knowing that they needed 2 points out of the weekend and they would qualify for Coventry again, having not made it to the dance for 10 years. Could the Wildcats make it back-to-back appearances? And the answer was yes, they could. When they faced Romford at home in the playoffs last year, Ethan James stole the show, but this time it was Swindon breaking Romford hearts. Aaron Nell with 2 goals, Chris Jones, Reed Sayers, Tomasz Malazinski and Jake Bricknell with yet another goal to his impressive campaign, against goals from Sean Miller and Reed Morrison. A superb playoffs from Morrison, having had a bit of a slow start when he joined from senior hockey in Saskatchewan, has made a real impression at the end of the year. But this result combined with the night before meant that Group B was all sewed up by the end of Saturday night, and it meant that the Wildcats and the Lightning had punched their ticket to the Sky Dome. Elsewhere, on the other game on Saturday meant that, well, the Knights are the Knights, and they as well punched their tickets by the end of Saturday, with a comprehensive 5-1 victory against the Peterborough Phantoms in Peterborough. Matt Barron, Bo Neely, 2 goals from the very impressive Finn Braden, and who else but Kieran Brown on the board for the Knights. Luke Ferrara, Mr. Peterborough, with the lone goal for the Phantoms, which meant that Group A went to the last day. Elsewhere on Saturday, MK beat Sheffield. Horrible playoffs for Sheffield. Nothing worked. 6 games, 6 defeats. No joy on anything. Ross Venus, Sean Norris, Ed Naggs and Dylan Lawrence for the Lightning. Jonathan Phillips and Walker Summer getting 2 goals inside the first 10 minutes before MK stepped up and walked them all away. Oh, apologies. That's not work. There we are. Heading into Sunday then, and well, we did wonder. Harrison Walker getting the start for the Leeds Knights in this one, as ultimately Peterborough did what they needed to do. They got their win at the Castle, avenging the loss from the night before. Matt Barron with 2 goals and Matt Bissonette, who scored his 17th point of the playoffs with that goal. 17 points in 6 games. Bear that in mind. For the Phantoms, Tom Norton, Cam Huff, Jarvis Hunt, Duncan Spears and Nathan Salem on the board, which meant they did have a little bit of a nervous wait for later on because of the Hull game starting at 6. At the Sapphire, the Romford Raiders closed the door on their season, but it was with a shootout defeat exactly a year to the day, or at least roughly a year to the day, from their last shootout defeat against the Wildcats. Tyler Perry in net for the Cats in this one, resting Rennie Marr ahead of what they knew was going to be a big weekend. Jake Sylvester with 2 and Reed Morrison with the last goal of the Raiders campaign in regulation. Tomasz Malazinski, Jake Bricknell and Reed Sayers on the other side. That late goal from Sayers just under a minute after Morrison's took the game into extras, and then Sayers with the game winner in the shootout sends Swindon to Coventry with a perfect 6 from 6 record, and the book closed on the Adam Leishram era as the coach of Romford. And then for the Seahawks, I thought Hull could win the playoffs, but it is not to be. The Telford Tigers just had a little bit too much, and the Seahawks, with Bobby Chamberlain back after his suspension, just could not find a way when it when it mattered, and the Seahawks are left wondering again what could have been as they miss out on Coventry again. They had David Thompson with a couple, Eric Henderson with a couple in there as well. Edgar Landsberg's getting a goal. Harry Ferguson with a couple. Scott McKenzie in there too, as well as Rhodes Mitchell-King. Emil Speck, Tom Stubley, Johnny Cornell, Lee Hayward and Bobby, and of course the last goal of Hull season going to Bobby Chamberlain, the captain, back on the ice after his suspension for the antics that happened in the last weekend of the regular season against Bristol. But ultimately, the Tigers pick up some points, and the Seahawks join them on the golf course to end things. So we look at the final tables from the playoff round robins, and there we can see the Knights. 4 wins, one in overtime with a shootout, 1 loss, and that 1 shootout loss to the Seahawks puts the Knights through. The league champions and cup winners go for the Grand Slam, having finished first in Group A with 9 points. Peterborough with 8 points, 4 wins and 2 defeats. They go through as the second seed from Group B. Hull and Telford miss out. And then in Group B, it was a bit more academic as it was all sewed up heading into Sunday. The Wildcats, 6 from 6 as they go to their second weekend in the last 2 years. And after missing out last year, the MK Lightning are back with a chip on their shoulder and wanting to make a difference this time around. They have come in with 9 points, Romford with 6, and a goose egg for Sheffield, who people will start to have a real sort of in-depth look at this season, and we will here at BOTW when the time comes, given that it's a pretty inauspicious end to their year. But as we keep being told by Jamie McElroy and by folk in Sheffield, that this is the start of a long process of things for developing young players in Sheffield, and maybe it didn't go very well, but it is only the beginning, so we are told. And that means, he says, having nabbed the graphics off of the National Division's Twitter, we are set. This coming Saturday, the 19th of April, the start of the end. 1:30 p.m. face-off at the Skydome Arena in Coventry. The Swindon Wildcats and the Peterborough Phantoms, the team that finished first in Pool B versus the second team from Pool A. Last year's playoff champions, the Peterborough Phantoms, who've had a bit of a wonky up and down year when it comes to the league, but when it comes to playoffs, we know what Peterborough do. They can put the league to one side, knowing that the title is out of reach, and they put their eyes down and they focus in again. They took leads right the way to the very end, and we know that this time around that the playoffs will be 10 minutes, 5-on-5, not 3-on-3, 5-on-5 for 10 minutes in overtime in the playoffs this year, ahead of the shootout. And yes, as I've just seen, no, I had to borrow graphics because Max isn't around. Max Van Mullen, for those of you who aren't aware, GB Under-18's netminder, is in Italy. And I'm not unreasonably, he wasn't here to do the graphics, so I borrowed the ones from the National Division. But the Wildcats, who have always been a great team on paper. And then when it comes down to it, right at the death, they never seem to just be able to quite get themselves over the hump. They were in the title hunt and then fell away again. They didn't qualify for the cup, finishing 6th in the cup table. But people say it feels different at Swindon this year, with Jake Bricknell putting in the goals and Ryan Wells as his defensive masterpiece. Rennie Marr's best year for some time. Vanya Antonov leaving the Bees to join the party. Is this the new look Swindon? Is this the Swindon that finally gets over the line and Sam Bullas finally picks up that playoff trophy? And then, well, what a main event on Saturday night we have got. The top two teams in the league, the League and Cup double winning champion Leeds Knights, go head to head again with the Milton Keynes Lightning. Ryan Aldrich versus Tim Wallace. What will Tim Wallace do given his 4 imports? Which of them will sit? Will he sit himself in this circumstance to have a real coaching battle with Ryan Aldrich? It remains to be seen. But with the Knights aiming to sweep the board for the first time in the National Division era, against the Lightning side that, like I say, has the big names, has the firepower across the board, but for some they underachieve, and for some they have not managed to click. And there were complaints, of course, about the imports and stuff. They have their top four point scorers for the Lightning are all British and finished well below. And their imports finished well below. We've had issues, of course, with injury, and when you look at it, Patrick Forsberg is a point per game, and Sean Norris, since his return, is over a point per game as well. But the Lightning's big struggle has always been putting it together. Cup semi-final against Romford, knocked out, beaten on home ice by a Raiders side that was down an import. Can the Lightning make it count when it really, really counts? We will find out this coming Saturday. It's a 5:30 p.m. face-off for this one to take us into Saturday night. Could have asked me. I make great graphics. Yeah, cheers, Dylan. So yes, so that is it. Saturday, 2 absolutely massive semi-finals. Would love to get your thoughts into the chat. The warm-up question, of course, was predict the weekend and see what happens on there, of course. Because then on Sunday, 2 massive games. They stole the show at the Seal City Showdown. The North-South Division 1 playoff final between Slough and Billingham went the distance, and we will talk more about what happened in that game in a bit. But they will meet for part 2 for the Division 1 National Championship game for a 12 p.m. face-off on Sunday at the Sky Dome. The Billingham Stars and the Slough Jets will dance the dance one more time to close Division 1's book on 24-25. Followed, of course, later that afternoon, the winner of Swindon and Peterborough versus the winner of Leeds and MK to be the National Division playoff champion. Will Leeds complete the clean sweep? Will MK get themselves over the line? Will Swindon finally fulfill some of that potential, or will Peterborough run the table again? It's going to be a hell of a way to find out. Now, Coventry is a sellout. There are no tickets left, so your only method of tuning in and joining in with those bits and pieces is, of course, to buy the streams. The clubs have been pushing it out. The National Division have been pushing it out. The England Ice Hockey have been pushing it out. £56 at the moment will get you all of the games for a cheaper price. And that is a good way to keep tabs on things. You will then, of course, and I have alluded to it over the last couple of weeks, but given that I can definitely say it, you get me. You get the fantastic Joe Scutts on play-by-play commentary to be joined by me. I'm back again for another year, giving you a bit of colour commentary and a bit of analysis as we run down the final weekend of the NIHL season for 24-25. I have known Joe for over a decade, and Joe's originally from is from this neck of the woods, and I've been living in Southampton now longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life. So the fact that two lads from Southampton who live the better part, who live like 15 minutes away, that we get to do this crazy thing and head a couple of hours north to commentate not just on a game of hockey, but on 4 massive games of hockey over the course of this weekend. Massively looking forward to it. Looking forward to spending some time again with the folk from Drop the Puck, with Ben, with Chopper and everybody else. Of course, make sure that we pay tribute to the fantastic Pete Sheffield. God rest him, who should be with us, but unfortunately cannot be because of he is indisposed in a shinier place than here. But massively looking forward to it. The pressure is the privilege, is the thing I keep telling myself, because having got to do Elite League hockey playoff, some Elite League playoff game last week, I was struck by the ridiculous amount of really cool stuff I get to do. And it popped up on my phone that it was 2 years ago today that the Solway Sharks beat Streatham to win the Division 1 national final and win the Grand Slam. And that was my first ever game of Coventry. And I am utterly bamboozled by what I've been able to do since. And I've known, like I say, I've known Joe for a really, really long time. So the fact to get to do this weekend alongside someone who is a friend and I've known for a really long time is brilliant. It's really, really cool. I'm massively looking forward to it. And if you cannot be there, then Joe and I will do our level best to talk you through. And the guys who do all the tech and do all the cameras will be there and we'll do our best. I can't set the prices. And I know people will say, it's too much, or it's this, or it's not the way I wanted, etc., etc. I get that. And I totally understand. What I can promise you is that all of us who are there are going to do our level best, just like the folk did at Sheffield last weekend in some really, really tough circumstances. We're going to do our level best to put on the most professional show that we absolutely can. That if you cannot be at the Sky Dome to watch it with your own two eyes, that if you sit at home and you put it on your telly, on your phone, on your laptop or whatever, you are going to get the best show that you can possibly get. I will promise you that. Awesome. Like I say, massively, massively G'd up for it. And it is going to be brilliant. What is going to happen? I can see Ben, part of the Drop the Puck team. Cats versus Leeds final. He's Cats to upset Leeds just for a change. Ben is predicting another Nell Classico. Would be pretty interesting. For me, that is where the smart money goes. The smart money goes on a Swindon versus Leeds final, which of course would see Leeds as the home team for the final on Sunday. But let's take this game by game in that sense. So let's not jump ahead of ourselves, because let's look at where the various teams can win. Stick it in the chat as well as to what you think. Who's going to win? What do you think the keys to victory are? If we look at Swindon versus Peterborough first, because of course that's the first game. Gee, naughty. Coventry don't even do that, and it's their building, so don't ask me how we're gonna rig that one up. That's what you can do, Dylan. You can come. We'll hang you from the rafters in the Sky Dome with a GoPro. So Swindon versus Peterborough on this one. Now it is. So Swindon have the season series over Peterborough in this, and they've had a couple of really, really big wins against them. Scored 9 goals in one, 7 goals in another. What we will see is two teams that have quite a set methodology of doing things, and it's actually one of my bigger criticisms of the two of them is that they do play very, very samey, and it makes them very, very easy to read. We know that Peterborough are going to collapse down, and they're going to try, and they're not going to come racing out. They will try and score early and then hang back and try and disrupt, because that's what they do. We know that Swindon are going to try and play long stretch passes and stretch the play, try and bypass neutral as much as possible, because that's what happens. Jamie, I can see, is stuck in the chat because he did stick up on his Twitter earlier today the stats for the various teams, and Swindon are 0-3 at Coventry weekends. Now, the interesting factor, like I say, the interesting factor on it is that certainly from Swindon fans, and I know the Macca's boys will talk about it, and any Swindon fan that I know who talks about it as well, they feel that even though they've kind of achieved the same thing this year around, even, you know, in fact, less if you're Swindon, because you didn't make the semi-finals of the Cup. But they do, certainly it'll be really, really interesting, because ultimately, whatever you think, and I made the point that I felt like Swindon had shuffled the deck chairs on the Titanic a little bit. They didn't feel massively different. I think it's fair to say that the transition from Colby Tower and Gail Lubwele and Tomasz Malazinski as their imports to Jake Bricknell, Tomasz Malazinski and Ryan Wells, I think Swindon are better than they were last year. I don't think that's unfair. I stick by my criticisms of them, because the way you stop Swindon is you clog neutral, and hey, guess what Peterborough are absolutely brilliant at? The question I have is if Swindon can strike early and draw Peterborough out, because Peterborough, if they're 2-3 goals down inside 13 minutes, for example, what do Peterborough do? Because ultimately the way they won the playoffs was keeping their opposition within a puncher's distance and then getting to the shootout, and what will be will be. Brad Bowering going Super Saiyan, and Luke Ferrara doing what he does, right? If Peterborough are 2 or 3 goals down at the end of the first period, can you see Peterborough's route back in? Because that's where I'm starting to consider the problem here. If Peterborough are a goal down by the end of the second period, Peterborough will probably win it. Will Swindon get slathered? It's the big question here. I see the worry. For me, Swindon have too much. That's my feeling on that. I think Swindon will win by a couple of goals. Maybe it's an empty netter at the end to really seal the deal. But for me, I think Swindon have enough to get past this version of Peterborough. And that's, Peterborough have got some really, really good players. Cam Huff, of course, who's going to be back next year, which is going to make people really happy. Hayden Levine has been much better in the playoffs than he has been at some points during this season. And you can't count them out. You can never count them out. But in my head, I see more ways for Swindon to win this game than I do Peterborough. The issue being, if Peterborough find their one way to win it, there'll be a problem. And then into Saturday night, Leeds and MK. Another one where it's really easy to look at the form book and go, well, this is painfully obvious what's going to happen, because in the big moment, send MK to unwins, it'll be a bottle job. This Leeds side, and we talked about it a lot, and other places, of course, have talked about it a lot, because I've been banging on about it for years. What do we call Leeds? Stick it in the chat if you know. But they're not the same Leeds they were before. 11 losses in the league. That's very un-Leeds-like for the last couple of years, as the other teams have scratched and clawed, pardon the pun, Swindon, and gotten closer to them. But they keep finding a way. Where do MK have that extra 1%? And this is what I asked back at the beginning of the season. If MK can find that extra 1% that has separated them from Leeds for the last couple of years, they could have won the lot. But they couldn't find it. But MK have more ways back in than they did in the past. Because again, in the occasion, what do they do? If MK go for the classic MK, shock and awe, bombard Leeds, and they're 3-4-1 up by the end of the first period, of course Leeds can come back. But will the occasion get the better of a Leeds side that isn't as good as it has been in previous years? Because let's face it, sure, Leeds have won 2 trophies this year, but they haven't been as good. Then again, sometimes that's what happens. NHL is an example. The 2016-2017 Washington Capitals were objectively better than the 2017-2018 Washington Capitals. But guess which year won the cup? I think Leeds win. I do think Leeds will win it. Because ultimately, you call the form book in these situations. And MK have a habit of tripping over their own feet when it matters in these moments. Leeds have been the better team. Also, Matt Bissonnette deciding to turn up in the playoffs and score 17 points in 6 games is pretty helpful. And you can keep looking at Kieran Brown and Ross Venus and Jordan Cowney and Jordan Boesa and Finn Braden and Matt Barron and the final goodbye to hockey for Matt Hayward. But ultimately, one of these teams wins in the crunch and the other one struggles to, which leaves us with an El Clasico final. And that could be anybody's guess. We'll have to see what happens on Saturday. I can see the Honourable Mr. McElroy of the parish of Sheffield Leeds versus Peterborough final, entirely possible. Leeds to win, Slough to win the Division 1 final comfortably. Now this of course will be the big one, and of course one of my favourite games of the year is this Sunday game in Coventry. It is why the Coventry weekend trumps the Elite League weekend for me, because that third, fourth place game at Nottingham is a waste of everybody's time, and the Sunday morning game in Coventry is big. It means something. 2023 in the Solway Sharks Grand Slam. 2024 and Streatham finally climbing the mountain after 3 attempts and failing. After 3 attempts and failing for the first 2. And this year we will get a new champion, because Billingham are back, having won the North, and Slough having finally done it, having been building for year upon year upon year. Lucas Smithill's grand plan was helped along by Invicta slightly, and yes, they have to thank former Jet Aaron Connolly for it, but their consistency got them through. And then when it mattered last weekend, as we'll see, the Jets did the business. Now the Jets, of course, had a problem last weekend, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And yes, people will say with a bit of rest, I think Slough can do it, but the problem, of course, is he's still got to do it, and this is a Billingham team who last year, when they came into that final, had 3 weeks off, with 1 import suspended and one import injured, and I've said this to Michael Elder, the captain of Billingham, I don't think they believed they could win it last year. And the biggest problem for everybody this year, if you think about 23-24, where Billingham won the league by tripping over their own shoelaces most of the time and got blown out by Blackburn in the Cup, with 3-1 up in the Division 1 playoff final and lost on penalties to the Hawks. Well, this year all have fallen. They believe they can do it this year. And sure, that Slough squad is brilliant. They are as good as any team I have seen this year at any level. They play amazing hockey. But this idea that Slough are going to walk this doesn't sit. Doesn't sit. Not with me at any rate. And sure, I wasn't there in Sheffield to see it with my own eyes last weekend. I wasn't. And I will bow to the people that were. But I think counting out the stars so lightly could come back to bite people. All I ever hear in the back of my head is Struan Tonner from 2022. Tell them the North remembers. If there's a game this weekend that goes to overtime or even penalty shots, it's Sunday, and it's Slough versus Billingham. Massively looking forward to it. And then who takes the big one? Who is going to be our NIHL National Division playoff champions? As Ben says, we won't have long to see. My heart says Swindon, because I want it for my friends. My head says Leeds are about to win the lot, because that's where the form book lies. That's where the quality lies. That's where the best team is. But the joy of it, of course, you either get to watch it live with me, or me and Joe will talk you through. That's the beauty of it all. And we get to close the curtain on 24-25. After 23-24, felt like that we dealt with a lot of tragedy. Where 24-25 ends, and we've had the Elite League go to the last 5 minutes, and the National Division had a 14 title race that was whittled down to 3 and to 2. And Division 1 has really stepped up and shown its colours this year. And, well, Division 2, we'll look at the score from the Division 2 final. The gunfight at the Steel City Corral, as it were. It's been a nicer year. A better year? In terms of some elements, maybe not. But it does feel like we've kind of come up off the canvas a little bit. Just like Nottingham have. And that can only be a good thing. So remember, if you're not there, get your streaming packages. Me and Joe will do our level best to talk you through in the best way possible, because Joe is one of the best in the country. And me, well, I'm an articulate loudmouth, and you all turn up most weeks to listen to me natter on, so why not get the opportunity to let me do it for you in this? What have we got in the chat? I think the game will go very similar to games in Leeds so far this season. 4 or 6 games between the two have gone to the away team. Gulliver to have one too many silly penalties, and Leeds will punish MK for it. That is a big issue, yeah, and MK's special teams has not been great. Karen, of course, who will be a very, very happy lady for the most part. after the weekend, although Sunday will of course dampen the spirits. Looking forward to the Division 1 final. It's a cracking game on Sunday. The repeat should be fun. Really fascinated to see how the two teams kind of alter their styles too, Karen. EIHL will be better than the NHL weekend simply because Nottingham are finally winning a trophy. Yeah, but you still got to put up with the third, fourth place game, which is a waste. Slough cruise to victory, and there's a world where it happens, but there's also a world where Billingham do it too. Is there a way we can get Romford to win playoffs? Any sort of spell to get them there? Trust me, I think Brandon Ailiff would take it at this point. Lose-lose situation for the Lightning. Lose and you bottled it, losing to the league and cup champs. Win and, well, they should be winning with that budget. It's a fair point, G, as well. But I think as well, when MK won the cup last season, there was kind of the thing was though, right, is that when they won the cup against a Hull side that kind of burned itself out by having to fight really, really hard to get there, they game planned leads out of their socks and got there, and they just were out. They were mentally spent getting to the cup final. And they had a bunch of different ideas. They tried some bits and pieces, but MK, with a better side over the two legs and won. But the problem for MK was that they kind of celebrated, but there was that kind of collective exhale of relief more than jubilation. If MK win this, then it's the jubilation factor because they will have come back, they'll have taken their licks, they'll have been beaten by Romford in the cup semi-final and lost the league again to Leeds, and then finally get that big crescendo moment at the end. And that, I think, will be better in some ways for MK than winning the cup last year, because it won't be a case that they should be winning that budget. And sure, people will say it, but the last thing everybody sees of this season would be MK with the trophy. And that will be enough on that front. What would you put in place of the third place game? Well, Dylan, if you go back and you read the 1000th article, Grand Ideas, over on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, I gave some rather flippant ideas as to what they should do for that third, fourth place game. I said they should incentivise it by giving the winner another import for the following season. What would we put in its place? I think bring back England versus Scotland. I think that's a really, really good idea if it's a possibility. I think potentially maybe get the GB women's national team to play. I think that would be a really interesting one. For me, the GB programme suffers a little bit with just kind of expecting people to hop on board without them really selling the game to people. And I think maybe the GB women, if it's before, depending on the timings of World Championships, that could be an option for putting in there as well, like a warm-up game for Worlds for GB women. What else could they put in there? Get a juniors national final into there. They're obviously, with the national division having a weekend, they're not going to get those bits and pieces in there. But there's a bunch of different options as to what they could put in there instead. And ultimately, I think that they just kind of need to be a bit more creative. Problem with GB women is the likely clash of worlds. Like I said, and that's it's not a perfect answer, but if it lined up, though, there could be a way to do it. Or GB women under 18s, GB women, that could be an option as well. Get the GB, could GB under 20 a GB under 20s game with players not playing at the Coventry weekend. That could be another option as well. All-Star game, North versus South. That would be a much more entertaining kind of piss-up game than what they currently have, which is two teams that lost the day before for something that doesn't matter. Give the game like a North versus South All-Star game would be having that kind of thing. You either need to have a game of import or a game of fun, and just having two teams that lost the day before isn't fun. Do they get the players from the two teams that have lost the day before, stick all their sticks in the middle, and you get two captains to just pick them out and do a pickup game like that? There's a bunch of different ways they could do it, but they just don't seem to have the creativity amongst them to kind of work around that issue. And like I say, don't get me wrong, we can't sit here in our national division bubble and say the Elite League, the Elite League's the bottoms league, the Elite League's boring, because their league title went to the final 5 minutes. Like, we can't sit here and say the Elite League is completely dog this year, because it hasn't been. But there are issues with the Elite League. There are things they do not do well, and I will sit here and I will point the finger and say, you could do that better. You can do it better. So do it better, because the Elite League controls itself. So solve your own problem on that front. A junior final will be slightly problematic. Yeah, yes, there's a bunch of different things, but they have, done bits in the past, and that's why I said maybe get back England versus Scotland and do it that way. Either way, we have looked at the National Division and we have gone through our bits and pieces. Roll on Coventry. And the thing I will say, of course, is a bit of a busman's holiday for me, and I don't stay at a hotel in town. I stay with friends. I kill a couple of birds with one stone. I get hockey, and I get to see a couple of my best friends, and roll it that way. What I will say, if I am not working and I'm wandering around, please come say hello. Like, it's really cool. It's cool to kind of meet people, chat to people. If I'm definitely going to be getting a beer at some point. So come have a drink, have a chat. Just come and say hello. It's awesome. Yes, Ben, you have timed that impeccably. WNHL Elite Final. Again, Worlds is a problem. Yeah, because they're and also as well, you take that away from their playoffs, Dylan. That's why I said maybe GB Under-18 women. Could GB Under-18s women play that game? And get a big showcase for them. That could be pretty awesome. Will there be some form of live chat for people viewing the stream from home? They didn't do it last year, but I will defer to Ben on that one. I venture probably not, but it could be fun. It could be a lot of fun if they did that one, but someone would have to moderate that, and that's a problem. Either way, let us click some buttons. Nope, that's the wrong button, Anthony. Technology! And we will head into, actually, what we should do this the other way around. Let's click that button there and load that up. And we will work our way through from the start of Saturday to the end. Now, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. No game of senior hockey should be finishing that close to midnight. I have no idea what went wrong. I have no idea what went wrong on that front, but all things considered, not great. The premise is brilliant, and it's a really good way for Division 2 and Division 1 to get a showcase event to do these things. But you can't have it finishing close to midnight. That is not feasible. That is not sensible. It should not be happening. And they need to work that out for next time. The issue, of course, that you get is that you'll end up having somebody facing off at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's not great either. But there's got to be a way to do it. There has to be a way to make it work. And make it work well. Now, for me, I maybe would have done, 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or 10 o'clock, 1:30, 5:30, 8, or 5:30 or 8, maybe something like that. It's hard to do, but having games finish close to midnight isn't ideal. Either way, the Steel City Showdown, Division 2, kicking off affairs. League champions versus the multi-cup winners. Guildford versus Peterborough, and this one went all the way. And Guildford will kick themselves because they were in the prime position, 3-1 up, including 2 goals in less than a minute at one point. Jack Sansby's goal cancelled out by Liam Kennington in the first, before Monty Gaylor, who very rarely scores at the best of times, and Sol Studley, who generally does, having them 3-1 up before AJ Herring and Jack Sansby pulled it back 3-3 by the end of the second period, and it literally went the entire way. And given his mum pinged me a message during the week going, "Is there going to be a stream so I can watch this?" Well, I hope she was watching, because Taylor Romeo put a smile on his put a smile on his face, and also he got the game winner. Peterborough picking up yet another trophy to add to the South One Cup and the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup that they'd already done. There's nothing particularly went wrong. If that Slough game finishing nearly midnight, Ben, that's a problem. That is a problem. What they could have done was do that on the Sunday morning. All of that on the Sunday morning before everything started, and then you've saved that massive chunk of time. In my opinion, that would have been a better way to solve that particular issue. But either way, Peterborough edged their way through. Guildford will have to comfort themselves with the league title, as once again Guildford trip over themselves in the playoffs and cannot find a way through. That then led us to the Northern Final. The dance, Peterborough and Guildford have been dancing around each other in the south. These two sides have been dancing around each other in the north for the last couple of years. And everything, again, goes to Telford. They beat the Sutton Sting by a score of 6-3. Telford 4-1 up by the end of the second period. Dan Harrison, Vlad Luca, and 2 goals from Taylor Stanton doing the damage there. Ryan Apsley on the board for the Sting. Sutton made it 4-2 through Charlie Saunders before Vladimir Luca had another couple of goals. Adam Brooks-Smith took some shine off of it, but ultimately the Tigers doing the damage, and they took the Northern Cup, North 2 League, and the North 2 playoffs to have a treble in their basket. And then Division 2 pulled down the curtain for 2024-25, and like I said, gunfight at the Steel City Corral. It all went bonkers. Look at this madness. 8-6 at the end of the second period. I mean, if it wasn't bad enough, it was 4-2 inside 14 minutes. Utterly crackers. Telford and Peterborough have been fantastic value, and hopefully fans at those respective sides, because of course those are 2 rinks with national division teams. And apologies, those are 2 rinks with national division teams, and I really hope that some of the folk have a look at what their Div 2 sides are doing and think to themselves, we should go and check that out, because look at the entertainment they chucked on here. But ultimately, it is 4 trophies for the Phantoms. A massive congratulations to Nathan Pollard and the team there in Peterborough on a massively successful year. Peterborough not winning the league, the jokes make themselves on that one, but we will skip past them because they are the kings. They are the top of the heap in Division 2. Vladimir Luca has a 7.5 goal game and loses. 2 goals from Taylor Stanton, 1 from Paul Davies as well for the Tigers. For the Peterborough Phantoms, a hat trick from James White, 2 for Leo Markey, and goals as well from Connor Pollard, Jack Sansby, AJ Herring, and of course Nathan Pollard got in on the bargain as well. Matt Byrne and Luke Clark, we will just ignore your goalie stats for today. We'll let it slide. Playoff hockey. We'll just let that one. I remember Joe and Chris looking at me and saying, some of them remember they played defence here. Of course, why defend when you cannot defend is the line that we like here. John, of course, who won our raffle. I hope you had a fantastic weekend, John. Yeah, afternoon off. Yeah, it's Sunday. We ain't working on a Sunday was the clearly the MO on that one. Welcome to Blaine's World. Yeah. Oh, bless on that front. Either way, then into North 1 and a sweep of North 2 for the Tigers and a sweep of North 1 for the Billingham Stars. In spite of Adam Barnes scoring an absolute worldie of a goal, it wasn't enough. And Billingham, who, like I said, in 23-24 tripped over themselves and ended up losing 2 trophies to the Hawks and losing the playoff final last year to Blackburn in penalty shots, having been 3-1 up. Not to be this time. The Billingham Stars come all the way through, do the damage, and get themselves over the line and pick up their 3rd trophy of the season. Adam Barnes with 2, Andy McKinney with 1 for the Hawks. Goals for the Stars coming from James Moss, James Helens, Conor McNulty, Rolands Grittans, Callum Wilkinson, and Ian Brown. Because, of course, it's Ian Brown. What's that on Ian Brown for the playoffs now? 14 goals. 14 goals in 5 games from Ian Brown. Pretty impressive, and a pretty impressive night from Jacob Hammond as well. That will obviously come back to haunt. And then in the south, well, Streatham held the season series, and Streatham held the season series over the Jets, but the ultimately when it mattered, as we said, Slough have been building, and they finally have hit that crescendo. They beat the Red Hawks to the league title, and then, well, the German word would be declassiert. They declassed them on that front. Slough with the 6-0 win, the Ollie Hemmings Mar show. Yes, we got the awesome fight between Brandon Miles and Ryan Watt into the bargain as well, which is pretty impressive, and a pretty old school fight between two old school philosophers of the game. But ultimately, it is Slough who finally get edge their way past the Redhawks in the game of import. Connor Redmond, 2 from Ollie Hemmingsmar, Christian Moore with 1, Seb Moore with 1, and Jacob Minter rounding off the damage there. 4 power play goals from 6 for Slough, really doing the damage, stressing getting himself into massive penalty trouble. Which then led us to the grand finale. And it went the absolute distance. And people have talked about that Adam Barnes goal. Conor McNulty's goal for 3-1 in this was absurdly good. But it goes into extras. Slough, of course, who finished that last game at 11:58 was the final buzzer on that game between Streatham and Slough. Ultimately, it came down to the fact that these two teams were going to have to go back head to head, and Slough, tired or not, forced their way and forced the issue. 4-3 up in this one before Callum Wilkinson tied things up. And it went into extras, and you may have seen it because the video's been doing the rounds. A blown edge from the defenceman. And whilst everybody has been talking about Ian Brown, quiet in this one, but you cannot count out Roland's Gritans unassisted goal in overtime, and Billingham win the Division 1 playoff national final by a score of 5-4. And what people have said was an absolute barn burner. The bits I've been able to kind of watch as I've gone along have been pretty impressive as well. And the best bit is they're going to do it all over again this Sunday at the Sky Dome, which is pretty impressive. We should say a big shout out to Jacob Hammond, who came out of the game in the first period with an injury, replaced by Mark Turnbull, who then made 38 saves into the bargain. So congratulations to him on that front. Goals from the Jets coming from Ollie Hemmingsmar, Juha Lindgren, Christian Moore and Brandon Miles. The goals for the Stars, 2 from Chris Sykes, 1 from Conor McNulty, which, like I say, go find the video, it's impressive. 1 from Callum Wilkinson, and like we said, that overtime winner from Roland's Gritans. Shout out as well the captain of the Stars, Michael Elder, a 3-point night for him. Slight surprise, I must confess, seeing Nate Gregory in net after this one, but obviously Matt Smittle having to do a lot of the heavy lifting the day before, and that's the faith that Lucas Smittle has in both his netminders. And as we say, then we scroll down very quickly because there it is, the last game. Division 1 closes its doors for 24-25, and they will go back to battle. Billingham, Slough, 12 o'clock, Easter Sunday at the Sky Dome. It's going to be a big, big game. It's a very enjoyable weekend. Enjoyed the 2 finals on Sunday. Great to hear, John. Luca, glad to see you're knocking around and you're doing well, young man. Midnight Snacks came in. I can only imagine. Here's the thing. Any kebab van would have been really wise to just set up outside and just hungry hockey players. Mark, and this is the thing with Billingham, and this is the thing people forget about as well, is that obviously Jacob Hammond had the start, won the game on the Saturday, he got the start on the Sunday. Like, Turnbull and Hammond have had ridiculous numbers in North 1 this year. Cracking weekend, enjoyed all the games, loved the format, but no idea how to fit it in better. 10:45 is too early as it is. Any earlier, it's just obscene, but don't know how else to do it. I thought they swapped them at the end of the first, and Gregory did periods 2 and 3. Well, there we go. Oh my god, MK fans and Billog fans in the same building, it's going to get loud. It is, yeah. John mentions about the Billingham fans. Billingham fans are, having spent some time with them up in D-side the other week, they are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. Fans who remember the 2018 and 2019 Coventry weekends where we didn't have the National Division, we had the Division 1-2 split, where Billingham didn't really travel that much to those weekends, but Whitley did, and Whitley fans were mental, like utterly crackers, conga lines all around the rink, drinking and being quite drunk and quite rowdy, but in a way that was absolutely fine and everybody really enjoyed it. If nothing else, I remember they would just pick a team for each game and just completely run with them, and that was amazing. Billingham fans are also pretty awesome, having seen them. They of course plied me with Parmo and beer. which was pretty fun. But yeah, MK fans, Billingham fans in the same building. Interesting to see actually when it comes to those, comes to the Division 1 final, who picks what side, of course. Now, Swindon, they're probably going to pick Slough because they've got, Jacob Minter, and Neil Lydiard as well. Very, very popular in Swindon, of course. So Swindon fans probably going to side with the Jets on that one. Leeds, probably going to side with Billingham because of Finn Braden. Hull fans will probably side with Billingham because of Tommy Spraggan, of course, on a two-way with the Seahawks. Bees, make your own jokes as to who they will side with on that one. No, they didn't bring the vodka-soaked gummy bears. They only did those for playoffs. Mostly because. It was the D-side game the weekend after they won the league title, so there wasn't more vodka consumed the week before. Given the fact they were all in hotels nearby rather than having to go back on the things, there was obviously they came on a Saturday night. They were picking up the league trophy the next day. They probably didn't want to be hungover for that. Whether I get a vodka-soaked gummy bear this weekend or not, I do not know. The problem will be I have to drive home on Sunday after the weekend finishes. So I might have to just slide it into the back pocket for later. Could be up to between 800 and 1,000 MKL fans on Coventry on Saturday. It'll be a sea of pink on one side of the Sky Dome. I mean, fair play. That's what we want. I don't know how they've managed to get 800 to 1,000 tickets, mind you, but we'll figure that. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah. A cracking weekend. Yes, some logistical problems that they kind of need to work out for that Division 1 and Division 2 weekend. But ultimately, some amazing hockey played and two cracking games on the Sunday. Peterborough stand atop Division 2. Billingham stand atop Division 1 for now because there's still a game left in that to go. And that means that we just get to look forward to the weekend and have a massive amount of fun. As I said, pick up the streams, do the other bits and pieces. The other thing we do need to talk about in Division 1 and Division 2 is because now everybody has announced it, and that means I can talk about it now. Where has it gone? I need to click the bits and pieces. Here we go. Because we have, where last week we had the announcement with all the nominees for the various awards. The NHL Awards, sponsored by the Ice Barn, powered by True Hockey. There you go. Said it again, Hayden. What more do you need? What's that there, Ben? It was good to have both leagues together so it filled out the rink better rather than dragging it out an extra week and only a quarter fill in the rink. Agreed. But we had all the nominees the previous week before. All of the Northern nominees for Division 1 and 2 were announced on the Starcast, and the Southern nominees for Division 1 and 2 were announced by Ben and on $0 given alongside Nicky Watt of 4,000 and counting. Good to see Nicky up there as well, volunteering, doing a few bits and pieces on that long shot contest. We won't talk about Ben's attempt. But what we do have is we have the awards for all of the divisions. So what we will do is we will start in the North, and we'll start in North 2, because of course there are a few outliers, particularly in that Coach of the Year award for North 2. Ultimately, one man got 2 awards. Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year award in Division North 2 goes to Taylor Stanton of the Telford Tigers too. A fantastic performance this season from the young 16-year-old, keeping pace and outscoring Vladimir Luka in the playoffs heading into that Steel City Showdown weekend. And that young man looks like he's going to have a massive, massive future going forward. The Coach of the Year for Division 2 North went to Gary Shaw of the D-side Ducks, who didn't make the playoffs, but given some respect clearly from his peers for the job that the Ducks were able to do, had some really lopsided results and came back and managed to get some really big ones as well. Clearly instilled a work ethic into his team, even though things didn't go their way. In North 1 then, and it was a split. 3 awards for 3 different teams. The Player of the Year award in North 1 went to Nicholas Otterson of the Solihull Barons. Of course, reportedly Otterson retiring, so a nice kind of a long service award on that front. But also the complete and utter fulcrum of the Barons' attack for many, many years. Young Player of the Year went to what I believe is the highest scoring under-18s performance in the history of NIHL Division 1. Alex Rushby of the Nottingham Lions is the Young Player of the Year for North 1. And Coach of the Year
Well, they had to get one of them, surely. Fozzie, Stephen Foster of the Billingham Stars, picks up Coach of the Year for Billingham's Cup and League winning success. In the South, into South 2, and well, he picked up enough cups, so he picked up a couple of individual awards into the bargain. Nathan Pollard gets Player of the Year and Coach of the Year for the Peterborough Phantoms 2 player coach, so a massive congratulations to Nathan. Young Player of the Year goes to Ben Beldikos of the Haringey Huskies, of course, a family affair in down in Haringey with brother John having been involved with Haringey as well. Cracking young talent, massive future for that young man as well. And then into Division 1 South, where a three-way split of the awards again. Player of the Year, well, you'd probably toss a coin on which one of them at times, but it's Cam Bartlett of the Chelmsford Chieftains. He is the Player of the Year for South 1. Young Player of the Year, and please don't fall off your chair in surprise, went to Sebastian Moore of the Slough Jets. Oh my, what a shocker that is. Probably one of the best young prospects in the country won the Young Player of the Year award. I know, I can't believe it either. Coach of the Year, probably a bit of an outside one, this one. A lot of people would have probably given it to Lucas Smittle for finally breaking all of Stretham's dominance, but instead it goes to Ken Forshee of the Swindon Wildcats 2, their first season at the Division 1 level, and ultimately a team that kind of like Romford, and you wonder whether Jason Buckman would have been in the running for this as well, but that Swindon side that started off a little bit wonky finally found its feet, got some veteran presence in the form of people like Ollie Stone, Ben Nethersell, Jan Costel Senior. Had to deal with the fact as well that Brett Massey got injured, and of course Brett has now retired from hockey, so he wished Brett the best going forward. Ben Clark-Leach thrown into the fire and did a fantastic job, and that Swindon side, yes, knocked out of the playoffs at the first attempt by Streatham, but a team that showed up and made a real impression on Division 1 South. Not there to make up the numbers whatsoever. Comfortably qualifying for the playoffs at the first time of asking. Congratulations to Ken for that. And congratulations, of course, to all of those winners across Division 1 and Division 2. People will say to me that I still hear some Elite League fans saying that hockey at the lower levels isn't entertaining. They don't know what they're talking about. Division 1, Division 2 is fantastic wherever you find it, and it's been massively entertaining across this year, and this last weekend proved that. Congratulations to all of those winners. The winners of the National Division Awards will be announced this weekend at the Skydome. And there we go. Everything. We've covered it all as far as I'm aware. All the games, all the happenings, all the big bits and pieces. The door is open. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything else anybody else wants to chuck in now, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how excited we are for Coventry. Tom Graham chucking in there as well that Ken Forshee had to do with losing Liam Coleman, Matt Lorday and Steve Osmond this season too. But let's chuck everything else in that people want to talk about, and we can roll on that. Let's hear your Coventry predictions. Let's hear your predictions for those National Division Awards. Let's hear what Let's hear what you're thinking about heading into the summer. Of course, Coventry, Spongate is going to be closing in May, so it's going to be the last ride for that one. Personally, don't go to the Spongate a massive amount. I prefer the Windmill. I think it's a better pub, so it's a better beer, but I know a lot of people enjoy it. Andrew, of course, is chucked in the bits and pieces to do with women's hockey, which I'll touch on in a minute. The big bit of news in terms of GB bits and pieces is, of course, from Liam Kirk. He now knows his destiny. The Eisbären Berlin and the Kölner Haie will go head to head. It's Bear versus Shark for the championship of Germany. That should start. I think it starts tomorrow night. Actually, we'll quickly grab the phone just to double check that. When is game 1 of that series? Yes, it is. It's tomorrow night, Thursday the 17th of April, 7 p.m. Between the Eisbären Berlin and the Kölner Haie. That will be at the Uber Arena in Berlin. Game 2 is Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Sorry, we're going to be watching something else. That will be at the Langsness Arena in Köln. What's Andrew put here in terms of the women's bits and pieces? Of course, the IIHF Women's World Championships Division 1B at Dumfries. Bronze for GB, shut out by Italy on the last day, but still a bronze medal heading into that game, so everything was a bonus. A 50th cap in GB colours as well for Solihull Vixens and Coventry NIHL Blaze player Jodie Alderson-Smith. Italy got 5 shutouts and won the tournament. Slovenia relegated to Division 2A. So as we can see there from Andrew, so GB lost 3-0 to Latvia. They lost 3-2 in overtime to Korea, beat Kazakhstan 2-0, beat Slovenia 8-2, and then lost 4-0 to Italy. Elsewhere, in terms of the women's bits and pieces, of course, action in Division 1 and Division 2 over the last weekend, when the Elite League is taking a break. Division 1 South, and the Fire Bees going down at home in Slough. They lose by 4-1 to the MK Falcons. The Bristol Huskies beat the Cardiff Comets by 3-1, and that wraps up Division 1 South. The Bristol Huskies, champions of WNIHL 1 South, so congratulations to Becky Hargreaves and the team over there. Division 2 North, a close one up in Widnes, but the Widnes Wild women beat the Leeds Roses by 2-1. Sheffield Shadows with a 4-0 win over the Kingston Diamonds. And Whitley Bay Beacons Division 2 roster, they beat the Telford Wrekin Raiders by 5-4. Division 2 in the South, in South B, a 3-1 win for the Coventry Phoenix on the road at Ali Pally as they beat the Lee Valley Vampires. And the Chelmsford Pythons getting a win over Bristol Huskies 2. Final score at Cribs Causeway 4-3 in favour of the side from Essex. South 2 Cup on Saturday, win for the Haringey Greyhounds. They beat the Slough Sirens by 3-0. And at Streatham Storm second roster, they beat the Invicta Dynamics by 9-0. The following day, a pretty comprehensive win for Haringey away in Kent against the Dynamics, 13-0, the win for Haringey over Invicta. With the World Championships done, it means that the Women's Elite League is back this coming weekend. And a trip to the high road for the Kingston Diamonds. They will travel to face Streatham. Solihull Vixens, the league leaders, will take on the Whitley Bay Beacons. And the Guildford Lightning take on the Queen Bees at the Spectrum. One game on Sunday that will see the Kingston Diamonds take on the Guildford Lightning. Andrew, off the top of your head, if you've got the numbers, what is the magic number for Solihull? Because Solihull comfortably atop the WNHL Elite League before things started, before the world started. So, just interested to know how far they're off securing the title, because they've got to be pretty close now, you'd have to think. We're just going to quickly pop and have a look at the see if there's any other news that's come up. Of course, we should mention, of course, the Elite League players, of course, like I said, given I commentated on them. Nottingham ending up edging out Guildford in the end. They managed to join the Belfast Giants. They beat the Dundee Stars. The Sheffield Steelers had a scare against the Glasgow Clan, but made it through in overtime in the House of Steel. And many people didn't fancy them to do it. The Cardiff Devils beat the Coventry Blades over 2 legs to secure their place. That means on Saturday it is Belfast versus Cardiff and Nottingham versus Sheffield, which is going to should be a fun weekend as well. But we're going to have even more fun where we are, which is what it is. Just going to check some bits and pieces as we're talking here. Like I say, questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything else anybody wants to chuck in, this is fine. Should be lots of fun. Either way. But yeah, NHL, of course, we are very, very slowly heading to where we say slowly. We're nearly there, nearly at the end of the regular season, of course. We've had all the bits and pieces. Alexander Ovechkin has broken the goal scoring record. I got my OV record breaking t-shirt turned up, so thanks to Fanatics for that. Marc-Andre Fleury, of course, heading towards the end of his last season, getting his little moment with the Minnesota Wild against the Anaheim Ducks last night too. The more ridiculous thing, it seems, that Calgary are going to miss the postseason, having more points than 3 teams that are not mathematically eliminated from playoff contention in the East, which is fun. But we do know that the Boston Bruins are out. My heart bleeds for them. And the Philadelphia Flyers are out. My heart doesn't bleed for them anywhere near at all. But what do we think? Who do we think is going to go well in the NHL playoffs? Lots of stuff happening, so yeah, apologies. Just having some water because my throat's gone very, very dry. But yeah, I'm excited for the weekend. I know it will. I know there's a lot going on. But yeah, there's a bunch of bits and pieces obviously going, go Avs. Well, they're going to go somewhere. Of course, Gabriel Landeskog back in action. That's pretty impressive to see. Did check out some of the bits and pieces from his game, for one of his games for the Colorado Eagles, of course. They very kindly gave him his first, the puck from his first point in his first goal in the AHL. Because, of course, Landeskog, being as quality as he has been, skipped that step straight away. But they handled that really well. I think the Colorado organisation did that really, really well in terms of Landeskog finding a position to play again after 3 years of healing and all these bits and pieces and setbacks and so on. And actually, like, getting him on the ice in the AHL with the Eagles, you feel like if Colorado's AHL affiliate was further away, they wouldn't have bothered. But given it's pretty close, they were able to kind of run and roll with that. And I think it was a really good thing. I think it was good for the Eagles as well. They'll get the fact that people will look and go, hey, who's that? That's pretty, the Eagles, let's go check that out as well. Ben has stuck that in the chat as well. Adam Mackman, who has run Ice Maidens for a really, really long time, been a massive pusher, massive promoter of women's hockey, says he's taking a step back. Now, I read his statement, and if you want to go read that, by all means do. And it's a shame he kind of feels that way, because ultimately, I would disagree with some of the things that Adam said about himself. Adam mentioned about the fact that he doesn't have the ability to kind of take things forward. I would massively disagree. I think Adam does, and I think is a huge proponent and promoter and believer in women's hockey. Like, would I like to do more for women's hockey? Yes, but I'm one man with one man's time. And it's why I'm really grateful to Andrew for popping bits in here as well, because if it's there, I will obviously talk about it. What it feels like from reading Adam's statement that he doesn't have anymore is the energy. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to run out of energy and to say, I need to stop. What I would implore Adam, and I don't know if he's listening, what I would implore Adam to do is to say, take your break. Please don't write it off forever, because there will always be space for someone who gave a lot to have a pause, have a rest, and come back. Please don't write it off forever. There will always be a space for people who care, and maybe it's not as big as you wanted it to be. Maybe it's not in the way you envision these kind of things, but ultimately, people will always welcome you back if and when you decide to do that. Ultimately, I think, a lot of people will no doubt be very, very thankful for everything that you've done. And whatever you do next, go well, be safe, be happy. And like I say, hopefully you get the chance to kind of go away and get some energy back. And hopefully you kind of reconsider, because I think the amount that you've done is massive. And just look after yourself is probably the thing I would say there. Just, if this, like I say, have a pause. Because you can always come back to things later. Like, all of this is all for fun, right? Like, I can't sit here and say that British hockey has made me a multi-millionaire, but it's made me really happy. That's kind of the big thing. I've really enjoyed it. It's given me some really cool opportunities to do some really, really cool stuff, like this weekend. And yeah, so just look after yourself, Adam, and shout if you need us, and when you're ready to come back, if you ever feel like you want to, then I think there'll be a lot of people waiting and happy to have you back when you come. No more news. So nobody having to apologise for sticking ineligible players on the benches. That was fun. Cambridge Kodiaks need a point to claim the league title. The game Sunday against Streatham will hopefully be the clincher, then on to the Cup. Yes, Dave, you've had a lot of fun, I know, following Cambridge around this season, so all the best to both sides in that game. I'm not going to wish one side more over the other. Just checking bits and pieces, because like I said, there's always that paranoia that something's going to happen. Not that I can immediately see. But yeah, so this weekend, so let's get this out of the way. Coventry. If you're not coming to Coventry, buy the streams, listen to me and Joe. Because like I say, those of us who are there, we will do our level best to do absolutely everything we can. We're going to put as much effort as we can do to make this as professional as we can be. And then, like I say, Joe is brilliant. And I know sometimes he's not very great being vocal about how good he is. So I will do it for him. Joe is really good. Joe's a really, really good commentator, and I like to think at this point, like 14 years into doing banners on the wall, 20 years into watching ice hockey, that you know that I'm going to give you honest critiques of things. I'm going to be enthusiastic about what you're getting, and I will hopefully make some sense in between the first and the last buzzer. So you've got two guys on commentary who know what they're doing. The Drop the Puck boys more than know what they're doing. We're going to have as good a time as we can. And like I say, just enjoy bringing you some really, really entertaining hockey over the next couple of days. If you see me around and I'm not working, please stop and say hello. Like I say, don't do the sort of things like, oh, it's that person I watch on YouTube. I'm a real person. Come and say hi. It's okay. If it's after the second game, buy me a beer. May as well try my shots on that one. But like I say, just come and say hi. I'll be wandering around. I'm more than happy. Like I say, I'm not. I do all of this for a bit of a laugh. Please don't think I'm unapproachable. If you want to come and say hi, come and say hi. It'd be great to meet people. That's what commentary. That's the best bit about commentary, right? And I know it's a bit of a weird thing for some folk in some of the lower divisions, but if you are coming, please come say hello. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a whale of a time. And ultimately, let's just enjoy ourselves. Let's have a good weekend, right? This is our big blowout, our farewell, our last days of school. Maybe don't sign each other's shirts. That's a bit weird. But let's enjoy ourselves. Let's have some fun. Let's wave goodbye to this season. Then let's wave goodbye to this season, enjoy our summer, and then start it all over again in September. Let's just see what happens. Before anybody asks it, though, before anybody says anything, no, I do not know what is happening with Basingstoke. If there's going to be an announcement about anything, it will likely come this weekend. I am steeling myself for good news and bad news, one or the other, maybe both. I do not know, though, and I will not believe a single thing until I see it, because I've been around British hockey too long. Andrew, what's we have here? I believe both Vixens and Queen Bees have played 16 games each. Vixens on 31, Queen Bees on 25. 4 games each to play. I think Vixens need one more win as they have better head-to-head over the Queen Bees. Thank you. If you're coming to commentary, I'm always happy for a chat around the MK blocks. Jamie, if you see me, grab me, mate, because I will be well off into my own world, probably. You know what I'm like. Please don't feed the commentators or bang on the glass, they startle easily. That's not true, and definitely do feed the commentators. I heard what happened in Sheffield. I don't startle... actually, that's not true. I do startle very, very easily, but I will forgive people for it. Joe doesn't startle that easily, I don't think. Yeah, definitely feed the commentators. Feed the commentators. Feed the tech crew as well. Don't feed the tech crew, because otherwise Joe and I don't have anything to do. Yeah, awesome. Like I say, last call. We're at 9:30 already, and I've got to go do life and stuff because I've hit an impasse where I've managed to do all of my nights for the National Division bits and pieces, but I haven't managed to do my nights for the Div 1. And hope you like pizza. I will take anything. I'm not that. I did not get to look like this, Ben, by being fussy about what I eat. Yeah, I've got a little bit left to do prep wise. I've got the Div 1 game I still need to prep for. More just in terms of getting a few bits and pieces in place, because I kind of know what I want in front of me, and I've got my National Division stuff all done. But it's just a case of finishing off stuff over the next day or so. But at least, hey, I've got till Sunday, so it should be fine, and it should be a lot of fun. But yeah, last call. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings. Stick stuff in the chat very quickly before we head out on our way. And I'll head next door to see what Bollywood film has been occupying my wife for the last hour and a half. Say that I want pizza now. That's annoying. Oh well. I say this, I'm making curry tomorrow from scratch, so I really, really can't complain about such things. But yeah, so Ben says, see you all in Coventry. It's going to be fun. Really, really looking forward to it. Remember, please also remember that the A46 is closed the entirety of the weekend. It's been closed until May, actually. There is a diversion in place. It will take you around some of the villages and bits and pieces, but you will get into the centre of Coventry, okay? There's no marathon being run this year, so the car parks of course, will be open. That should be lots of fun as well. There's no other big goings on, particularly in Coventry this weekend. We are the big show in town, as we all deserve to be. Right. We will call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL. Thank you for following Banners on the Road this season. Of course, we will do our bits and pieces for Curtain Down when the season has concluded. And then coming this off-season, hockey stories. Bits and long-form, in-depth pieces from across the world of ice hockey, some in written, some in audio-visual form. But we go from the 19th century to the present day, behind the Iron Curtain, into war and beyond. Plenty of stuff there for you to enjoy, as well as the back catalogue of the BOTW podcast and our free to download tabletop ice hockey game, Dice Hockey. All we ask is that if you go and check out Dice Hockey and you do play it and you do enjoy it, please do chuck some money in the way Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's and Parkinson's dementia. Parkinson's sucks. So let's do what we can to raise some money for research and a cure. Either way, 14 years worth of stuff over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. All of our socials are in the description down there. Hit the link to Linktree. We're on Facebook, we're on X, we're on Blue Sky, and all of those wonderful bits and pieces. And there's also the link to our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Of course, never going behind the paywall or anything like that, but stuff costs, and if we can keep if you want to help keep the lights on and the wheels turning, please do feel free to chuck us a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. And then of course there's the YouTube channel. Head down, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, share the videos, check out all of the bits and pieces we've got there. Plenty of stuff. All of the old What's Current streams that we've done over on YouTube. Sorry, didn't find a way to save the ones we did on Twitter back in the day. But like I say, all the last couple of years worth of What's Current streams, interviews, all kinds of other bits and pieces. Buy Me a Coffee has been upgraded. Oh yes, well done, Dave. Buy Me a Coffee has been upgraded to Buy Me a Pizza. Yes. Or a £5 pizza. There is a place near me that does £5 little personal pizzas. Those are good fun too. But yes, plenty of stuff here on the YouTube channel. And of course, we've been here throughout the season here. Wednesday nights, 8 PM, the What's Current stream. We will be back next Wednesday night to run down commentary, all of those bits and pieces before we head into our semi-hibernation during the off-season where we run once a month. But we will be back next Wednesday to look at it all and have a run through everything that's happened. So don't you worry about that. But of course, like I say, you've been here, a lot of you this season, or even if you're brand new this time out, Wednesday nights, 8 PM on YouTube, the first, best and only show that covers the entirety of the NIHL. It's the What's Current stream. And so here it is, the last weekend of hockey of the 2024-25 NIHL season. What a ride it has been. There have been some frustrations, there have been sad parts, there have been great parts, there have been amazing parts, there have been quality goals scored, there have been big games won, and we are here. 3 left in the National, 1 left in Division 1. I get the honour of talking you through a couple of them alongside one of the finest people I know. It's going to be great. And I can't wait to be share it with you guys, whether you're in the building or whether you're watching at home. Let's end this one in style, shall we? Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please do whatever you can to please be safe. As my friend Scotty was, and it's his birthday today, so happy birthday to Scotty. But as Scotty was would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe, and so long till next time. The big crescendo moment is coming. And yes, there's news. It's seemingly lurking on the horizon that would mean a lot to me. I'm not setting my sights on anything too big, too far, too yet. because I get to do one of the coolest jobs in the world, and I get to talk about hockey for the weekend. Full speed ahead to the Sky Dome.